Shalom, shalom, shalom. To everybody that will hear me at the sound of my voice, shalom. Family, shalom. Amen, amen, amen. We're going to do part 2 of Revelation today. The beast, revelation, colonization, and the introduction of global racism. You had Hellenization, which is a term that the Greeks created, but the practice of Hellenization is the same practice of Babylon. First Babylon, which would have been who? Which would have been that brother that was running Ur. That's the first Babylon. That's the first system. Nimrod was running. Everything came from Nimrod. Nimrod ran the first system. You can go back into history, you'll find the Hammurabi codes that come out of Ur, the kingdom of Ur. Now, understand what I'm about to tell you. So you had Hellenization, you had the 10 toes, the mixing of the iron and the clay, and then you get colonization. It's 3 different levels of humanity when you deal with the tribe of Judah. Hellenization. That's what the Greeks coined it. But the practice goes beyond what the Greeks coined it. That's we first hear Hellenization through the Greeks. Hear that. That's when we hear Hellenization. But the practice was going on long before the Greeks. Hear that. We know that Nimrod was torturing the earth. And he was doing everything that the Greeks done. The Greeks got it from Nimrod. The Greeks got it from the Pharaoh. So we give the Greeks that term, but that's because they gave it a name. But the practice is long before the Greeks. Hear that. That's the first thing we need to understand. So if you say Hellenization, you talked about what the Greeks named this condition. So we know that Hellenization is the golden image. Hear that. And at the tail end of that golden image is the 10 toes. And we know the 10 toes represent the Romans because you have the leg, you have the right and left leg. East Rome, West Rome. This is what Daniel is telling you about. When you hear about the 10 toes, they connected to what? The legs. East Rome, West Rome. That was an iron kingdom. We know again, like I told you yesterday, that Constantine mixed the iron with the clay. He mixed religion with government and produced a philosophy. We know that. So when you deal with the golden image, you're dealing with what? You're dealing with a Hellenization, a Hellenizational period, a period where folks would come into your land, place religion over you, they would dominate you, and you would come subject to them based on their ability to create a God that looked like them and made you subject, that made it look like they were greater than you because God looks just like them. That's what you're dealing with when you deal with Hellenization. Yet they didn't take your language. And a lot of times they didn't take your full belief system. Now the 10 toes mix the government with the religion. Hear that. That's the 10 toes. Then you get to what we need to deal with because it's our day and time. The beast. Revelation. Revelation tells us about this beast. We understand, you'll hear the Edomite say it's a computer system. No, it's not a computer system. It's far beyond a computer system. It's more deadly than a computer system. But what the beast did is unruly. The beast means unruly powers. That's what you're dealing with. Unruly power, no empathy, has no conscience towards who they rule over, which would so happen to be what? The dark races. Colonization is to rule over the dark races. Hear that. Yesterday we showed you the red dragon and the seat of that dragon in the earth. Today we're going to show you the operation of that beast and what that beast was designed to do, and we still under that beast. Here's where the confusion comes from. You're looking for a beast to rise up out of the sea in the last day. That beast has already risen out of the sea. That sea was the Atlantic Ocean or the Ethiopian Ocean. It depends on your history knowledge. The Atlantic Ocean or the Ethiopian Ocean, it's the same ocean. But that beast was what? The Atlantic slave trade. Remember this ominous thing that's in Revelation. Who can make war against the beast? Why is it saying that? Because the Royal Navy, which was the British Navy, controlled the Atlantic Ocean during the Atlantic slave trade. And they were the ones making sure that weaponry got into West Africa for the colonizers that would come. They were making sure that advanced technology would get into West Africa for the slave traders. They came with massive weaponry. And then they made sure that there was no way for Africa to fight back because the Royal Navy was the dominant navy. And so when you hear that statement, who can war against the beast, is talking about the British Royal Navy, who was the dominant navy at that time, with the assistance of the Netherlands, like the Dutch and the Danish, which we know are today what you call the Jews, the Ashkenazi Jew, who also produced what? Most of the slave ships that went into West Africa. And also they were mighty slave traders, and a percentage of them were slave owners. Hear that. Yes, the Ashkenazi Jew produced slave ships, and many of them were slave traders, and many of them were slave owners. Also, we know that the evangelicals, the Christians, was running slavery in the 13 colonies. We know this. By the time we hit the 19th century, 1805 and up, Christians had full authority of slavery in America. That's why I'm going to put up some slave codes that you need to hear that are ominous with Christianity. And these slave codes deal with how to deal with a Christian and how a Christian is to act dealing with slavery. There would be no reason to have slave codes based on Christianity if Christians wasn't the ones writing the slave codes. I stood at the place where the Virginia Assembly first met when it came to the slave codes. And the place I was standing was a church. Hear that. I stood there and recorded video, and I put the video out last year where the Virginia Assembly first met under Governor Urey in a church to discuss slave codes. So we know Christians and Jews and Catholics are the main reason why the Atlantic slave trade was so prevalent, so prosperous, and so powerful. But the beast that you're dealing with, that I'm going to talk about in colonization, is that beast that came through the Atlantic slave trade. It kicked off the Atlantic slave trade. That's why John tells you, I seen a beast rise from the sea. What sea? The Ethiopian Sea, which is now known as the Atlantic Ocean. I seen that beast rise. What was that beast doing? It was coming to enslave slaves in West Africa. That's what was happening. Hear that. And on the tail end of that beast, in the belly of that beast, would be colonization. Hear that. That's what we're dealing with. That's your learning system. That's the philosophy you live by. Everything you do right now in the world as a dark race is based on colonization. I hear people say, well, they can speak Hebrew. That's because they don't understand colonization. What separates colonization from Hellenization, colonization took your belief system totally, and it also took your language and recreated it. It would also snatch your heritage. We see under Hellenization that the Jews had their own language still, the Jews had a belief system still, and you find that Octavius himself was writing edicts in the first year of the first century to protect Jerusalem to where they could practice their own religion. Colonization does not do that. What they do have in common is they both take your God and they flip your God to look just like them. So the first God we know in human history over black folks that looked like the white man was Serapis Christos. The second God that we know, and that was through Hellenization. The second God that we know to be over the dark race that looks like the white man would be Jesus Christ, the one you call Jesus Christ. This same theory is from Hellenization to colonization. And what they have in common when it comes to the gods, they're ruling over dark races in Hellenization, and they produce a god that looks just like their ruler, just like the Hellenizers. Serapis Christos would begin to become and look like Ptolemy the second, third, and fourth. Hear that. The same way with Jesus Christ. We understand that he's basically from a Catholic bloodline. Hear that. And we know that he looks just like our colonizers. Hear that. Some of us are so indoctrinated that this will offend many Christians, but history says Pastor Wilkins is telling the truth. I wrote a post today and I said black people cannot be racist, because when you say that we're racist, you don't understand what racism is. Racism is a theory that the white race is greater than the black race. That is the theory of racism. And racism does this. It is to take away your understanding of your language, your heritage, and your belief system. And you need the white race to understand language, heritage, and a belief system. That's what racism is. So we can't be racist because we would never benefit from the purpose of the creation of racism. This is what colonization does. I'll hear people say, well, the Greeks were, no, the Greeks and the Romans had many European nations under Hellenization. They had the Portuguese, 218 BCE, under Hellenization. They had that people called, that you call the Spaniards, under Hellenization. 43 AD, they had the British Isles. They had Europeans under Hellenization. The difference between Hellenization and colonization is that colonization is designed to have the black race under that theory and the black race only. And you see this right now in modern life. Africa is the richest continent in the world, globally, hands down, richest continent in the world when it comes to natural resources. Yet the poorest people in the world are the same people from that continent. That's colonization. They totally pillaged the land. Hear that. They took away your belief system. Hear that. The Catholic Church used edicts to find what? The Sabbath keepers of Sardi and the commandment keepers of Yah. They used edicts to flush them out. Now less than 5% of the global population are Sabbath keepers based on law, statute, and commandment. Hear that. So what you have is Hellenization. At the tail end of Hellenization, you get the 10 toes. That's 10 regions of the Roman Empire that was influenced by religion and government. Religion now becomes a powerful tool to what man would believe based on the policy of government. That's what you're dealing with. You see this play out. I'm going to do a video called The Shot, and I'm going to show you the shot and the theory of the shot based on colonization, because I think it's something you need to see. So that video that I will do will be called The Shot, because you will find that many black preachers are under that theory that comes from colonization when dealing with that shot. What you have to understand when you're dealing with colonization, that the scripture spoke of this tragic beast that would come. And the fallout of that beast would be the dark races. Not the Europeans, not the Mexicans and all these. No, it would be Africa itself. For the beast came to devour the place of life. You're talking Satan, and he came to devour the place where life was birthed, which would be Africa. So we know that the dragon is wroth with Africa because it's the place of birth. Hear that. Now, when we understand colonization, we have to understand it produced a mass racism all over the world. So we understand the first God given to the dark race came through Hellenization, and that would be Serapis Christos. We understand the second God that comes through colonization would be Jesus Christ, and he looks a lot like Serapis Christos. So what did they do in human history? In human history, Hellenization of the Greeks brought you a white God that ruled over the dark races. All throughout history, God looked like the people that was worshiping him. Hellenization changed that under the Greeks. We also understand that colonization also changed that under the Europeans. So now you have a blonde hair, blue-eyed Messiah that looks just like your colonizer. So what does that do? It gives you the perception that they can't be evil because they look just like God. So maybe that we are subject to something, or we're rebelling against God if we rebel against our oppressor. Understand that. It's the same tactic that Alexandria and Ptolemy used in 332 BCE in Alexandria, Egypt, because it was not called Alexandria until Alexandria conquered it. And we know that Daniel told us about that. We know that Daniel told us about the horn that would be broken. He was talking about Alexandria. He's that horn that would be broken. And then he tells us about 4 other entities. That's the 4 what? Leaders that would then go ahead and run Alexandria's kingdom, empire. And we know Ptolemy and Antiphonus are 2 of those leaders. And we know they were fighting for Jerusalem. Understand that. And we also understand history tells us at one time Jerusalem was named Antioch Jerusalem, which was short for who? Antiphonus. Hear that. Epiphanes. Hear that. So now let's deal with colonization, because the scripts are very gifted at showing you the timeline of these events if you understand what you're hearing. So now you hear this 7-headed beast. That 7 heads are the 7 what? Colonizers of the beast. The 7 heads come after the Atlantic slave trade, even though the beast rose from the Atlantic slave trade. What he's showing you is an overall view of what he's seeing. He sees this uncruel power that rises as the Atlantic slave trade. Then he sees a beast that has 7 heads that's a part of that Atlantic slave trade, because it's through the Atlantic slave trade that the colonizers are produced. That's the 7 heads of that beast. Hear that. Now, when you see those 7 heads, it's 7 European nations, and 3 of those nations happen to be the Ashkenazi Jews, the Dutch, the Danish, and we know the Netherlands. So, and the Portuguese also had Jews in their rank. Hear that. So now where we struggle, because we've been taught about this white God, we need white folks to tell us what colonization and the beast is, and they're never going to tell you what history says. So what we guilty of in Christianity and sects of the awakening is Yah spoken told me, so that you can persuade that person to believe your theory. So they'll say Yah spoken told me, when it's not Yah that spoken told you anything. That's a persuasion tool that many preachers use to make their theory work. Now, watch this. So now we're dealing with colonization. The 7 heads are the 7 colonial powers. It also will mention a 8th head that would come into this colonialism. Hear that. Now, when you start dealing with the 10 crowns, that's dealing with the 6 nations that was running the what? The Atlantic slave trade. But 3 of those 6 nations are already of the colonial powers. So you add the other 3 nations to those 7 heads, that's where the 10 crowns come from. All this is West Africa. So now you're seeing the 10 crowns come to pass. Hear that. Now, watch this. But we got to deal with that beast and how that beast has come to it, brought us into colonization. If you will deal with me in the book of Revelation, watch this. Revelations 17. This is laying it out as clear as the nose on your face if you're hearing it from somebody who knows history. Watch this. You can't teach Revelations without history. The beast has been here since the Atlantic slave trade. Understand that. The dragon seed has been here since 252 BCE under the Roman Republic. Hear that. Watch this. Now let's look at Revelation, and now let's understand what he is saying in Revelation. Watch this. In the 10th verse, and there were 7 kings, 5 have fallen, which is talking about 5 of the kings of the 7 kings have fallen. That's what it's dealing with. So now we understand, and one is, and one is to come. When was it written? In the day of the Roman Empire. So one is to come. What is the one that is to come? The British Empire. That's what that's dealing with. Watch this. And the 11th verse is what we need to see. It says, and the beast was and is not. What is he saying? When the beast rose, these 7 nations that would become the colonial powers are not yet in existence. That's what it's telling you. Watch that. And is not. Even he is the 8th. The 8th is America itself. When you hear even he that is the 8th, that's America. Why? How can you say that, Pastor? Listen what he said. And is of the 7th. That's why you know this is the British and America. Because America is of the 7th head of the beast, which is the British. The Americans are the British. So we know that the 8th head, because in the 19th century, America also starts colonizing West Africa and Africa itself based on British policy. Hear that. So they start colonizing Africa based on British policy, because when they started, they was not mature enough in the rule of law. And the rule of law that they were using was the rule of law they adopted from the British. That's what connects America to the British today. The rule of law that they adopted from the British, and the British adopted from the 6th century emperor who built it up from the 2nd century emperor Septimius, who was a Hamite. He is the responsible one for the bones of the rule of law. Septimius, who is a Hamite. And history repeats itself again through Barack Obama, who is a Hamite. The only president in U.S. history to be the president over the rule of law at Harvard Law School. The only president. What was he over? He was over the indigenous rule of law created by another Hamite who was Septimius. Understand that. History proves all this. We laying it out. Now you have mores that will teach you the fatal wound is Septimius. That's not true. History don't prove that. The fatal wound would have been the Revolutionary War, when the Brits fought themselves in the 13 colonies and they severed. It was as like a fatal wound. It was not a fatal wound because the Paris Treaty of 1783 brings these two back together again. And we know the British produces who? They produce the Americans. So when you hear this is ominous. 12th verse. And 10 horns which thou sawest were 10 kings which received. 11th verse. Let me go back to 11. Wait a minute. And the beast that was is not. And even he is the 8th and is of the 7th and go into perdition. He's explaining to you that America will be birthed from that 7th head. That 7th head is the British. They're the only ones that had a wound of the colonial powers that was as fatal but was healed. No other colonial power has that ominous sign hanging on their head. America, the British in America, defeat the British in the British Empire right here in the Revolutionary War. And it looked like it was fatal, but the Paris Treaty of 1783 healed that wound. Hear that. Not only did it heal it, it brought them back together. And then that 7th head produces what? The Americans. Why did they produce? Because the American adopt the rule of law from the British. Countries are ran by the philosophy of law. So everything America is based on the rule of law. Everything America does is based on the rule of law that they adopted from the motherland, which would be England, which would be the British Empire. So when you say England, you're saying the British, because we know the England Empire is the British Empire. We understand that. Now, so it says that 7th head would produce the 8th head that is not. It's not in existence yet. So when it produces it, it will go into perdition. What does it mean? It will be doomed. That 8th head will literally be doomed. Now, watch this. Let me show you something ominous. Have you ever heard of anybody in the Atlantic slave trade escaping slavery and running to America? Nowhere. I do chase in our history. I found no place in human history where a person was running for their freedom to the Americas. But they would run to England, they would run to British, they would run to Canada. Nobody's ever ran from those other countries to the Americas for their freedom, because free black folk in America even went into slavery. Free black folk in other countries did not go into slavery. Hear that. But free black folks, through the Christians of the Virginia Simile, placed all black folk at one time or another, as many as they could, into slavery. If you was free, you could find yourself sitting in slavery under the slave code if they caught you in the right place at the right time. That's where you get the novel 12 Years a Slave. A free man finds himself in slavery because he was in the wrong place. That's what the slave codes come to do, to produce a lower level of life for the black race. So now we see colonialism as that second beast. We also see global racism, because this chattel slavery and this oppression would be based on the color of your skin, and they had a theory that the white race was far superior than the black race. So now what do we see? We still see this dynamic, because this is a spirit, and spirits don't die. Look at LeBron James. He's a billionaire, yet he has an owner. Look at Michael Jordan. He's a billionaire, yet he's had an owner. Look at Oprah. She's a billionaire, yet she's ran by white folk. So everywhere you see us with these billions, white folks are over us, because the philosophy is we need supervision. When they created the crime bill, hear this, the vagrancy law and all these other crimes, it was to say that free black folks needed supervision. And that's how we are treated right now by the police. If a black man and a white man has an altercation, 100 times out of 100 times, they're going to the white man. ask them what happened. They're going to separate you, and then they're going to come to you, and you got to defend what that white man said happened. They don't want to hear your story because the mindset of colonizers is we must supervise these people at all times. Think about how talented Michael Jackson was, yet he had an owner. Hear that, Sony Records. Why? Because this is the way colonization is set up. No matter how prosperous you are as a black person, you will always have some form of owner that looks like the European Messiah. Why? And we come subject how? Because we subject to that European Messiah. What the colonizers figured out through the Catholics is that Ptolemy works. Because what happened? Egypt's offseed came subject to white pharaohs. There was 35 dynasties, no white pharaohs in sight. But as soon as Alexandria conquers Egypt, they now have white pharaohs like Mark Antony and Cleopatra are ruling black races as their pharaohs, meaning the top of the government in that country. Well, what colonization does, it don't put a white man at the top of your government in the land. It puts the philosophy of that white man as your government in your land. All of Africa except Ethiopia and Libya is believed to be the only two countries that's never been colonized. Even the Bantu language has been colonized. All Hebrew languages have been colonized. When you say you speak Hebrew, you speak it from colonization. That means that the white man who colonized you has authority over that language that you speak, and they themselves have influenced that language. That's why the scripture says he's going to return us to a pure language, because you don't speak a pure language. I know that people say, well, I speak Hebrew. No, actually, you don't speak the indigenous language of your people because it's been colonized. Hear that. That's what colonization does. It takes your language, your heritage, and your belief system. And you have to go through those who believe they're superior to you to think, to emotionally know how to believe, and to grow in knowledge. You go through these people. That's what you're dealing with. Let's go back and look at it again. He's telling you, even though the beast rose in the Atlantic slave trade, that the 7 heads are not yet. 10th verse tells us that. There are 7 kings, 5 have fallen. 1 is, and another is yet to come. Talking about the British Empire. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. The British Empire is one of the shortest space of what? Of an empire in empire history. If you look at the other 6 empires, their length of time supersedes that of who? Of the British Empire. Even though Alexandria died, we know that 4 of the rulers took on what? The British Empire and continued. Ptolemy, Antagonist, and 2 other leaders continued that Hellenization. Hellenization lasted well over 800 years. Colonization is going into 800 years. We know that the system, hear this, the system of the 10 toes is well over 700 years. Hear that. So this is what you're dealing with. Because where did Constantine run? Constantinople. He was over Constantinople. So we know West Rome fell in 475 AD. Yet East Rome did not fall until 453 AD. 1 year after the Papal Bull that was in the Saharan African area of West Africa. The next year, East Rome falls. So the shortest span of that empire they talking about is the British Empire, which is the shortest span of an empire. Hear that, according to the 7 empires. Now, watch this. 11th verse. And the beast that was is not. What is he talking about? The colonizers have not yet come forth yet. The colonizers have yet to come forth, though the beast is out of the water. This unruly, ungodly nature of the Atlantic slave trade exists, but the colonizers come later, even though the beast is up out of that water. Watch this. Watch this. And the beast that was is not. Talking about the British Empire. They are not yet in power. That's what it's talking about. And it calls them out, and it calls out America. even he is the eighth. The British is the what? The seventh and the eighth head. Because what? They fought themselves in the Revolutionary War. Who owned America? The Brits owned America. Who was the Brits fighting? Folks from England who were the Brits. That's what that's telling you. He said, even not, he says again, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth. Talking about America is yet to exist, but the eighth, the seventh is the eighth, because America is the British. It's like North Korea is South Korea, East Germany is West Germany. Same people. That's what that's telling you. So he's telling you that even though an eighth colonizer will come forth, that eighth colonizer is the British, and the only thing that separated them was a Revolutionary War, because the British ran America before the Americans. You can say 240 we did slavery, but you can only put 79 years of that slavery on the head of who? Of America. Because America didn't get the control of slavery until 1776. 79 years. The rule of law comes in 1787. Hear that. So they're on the hook for the time of the rule of law until slavery ended, about 79 years. The same time from the time the Pharaoh's daughter touched Moses until they left Egypt, 79 years. The same time of the rule of law in America until our freedom, Juneteenth, 79 years. The same time of the Americans controlling by legislation slavery until our freedom, 79 years. And you shall visit Egypt again. There's a timeline in Egypt that is the same timeline in America. Hear that. That's why it tells you the eighth head goes into perdition. The eighth head is the great Babylon. That's what it's telling you, because it will be the last power to remain in human history before the return of Hamashiach. America, when America goes down, the Gentile fulfillment is over. When America goes down, the Gentile fulfillment is over. I know this is a lot for some of you because of your colonization. You've been taught the European version of the beast. And they done turned it into a computer, everything but them, but yet history confirms everything I'm saying. Now watch this. So the seventh head and go into perdition. So the eighth head is of the seventh head. The Americans is of the British. Hear that. That's what that's telling you. So now when you deal with colonization, you understand they gave you a white God to make you subject to, that you are not equal to them. This is what colonization is. The black race is not equal to the white race. And not only that, we're going to take a formula from what? From Hellenization and place it in colonization. We're going to give you a God that looks just like us. So no matter how bad we treat you, no matter how bad things are for you, we need you to look to us for your deliverance, because us look like him. And slave masters would tell you, boy, there's nothing you can do. We're like gods because we look just like him. That was a common statement given to the slave. So you see colonization being ushered in, and there was a process period called the 10 toes. You have Hellenization, and you have a white god, Ptolemy, Serapis Christos, over the Egyptians, and some of the Jews who were born and raised in that area also was under this philosophy. And then you see the 10 toes, that is Constantine when he mixes what? The iron with the clay, but again, that is the 10 regions of the Roman Empire. In that region was Europeans, Africans, all the sons of Noah's descendants were in that region. Japheth, African, and you had Japheth, you had Ham, and you had Shem. All their descendants was in that Roman Empire. All of them. Hear that. Now, understand. So these 10 toes come along, and they influence that government and religion would interlock. And the scripture says both has influenced the sons of men. What does that mean? You've been influenced by the religion of Hellenization and colonization, and you've been influenced by the government of these entities as well. So we see the golden image deals with Hellenization, and it deals with what? The ushering in of colonization, because the 10 toes represent the 10 regions of the Roman Empire, which you had the sons of Ham, the sons of Japheth, and the sons of Shem, all was within that Roman Empire. Hear that. Now colonization begins when you see the beast coming out of the sea, which would be the Atlantic slave trade. That's the beast. But it also tells you that the colonizers, even though the beast is present, the colonizers are yet to come, and the greatest of the colonizers would be produced by the seventh head. And we know that the Brits produced America, and America is a part of colonization. Hear that. Let's read it again. 11th verse. And the beast. Let me do this. Let me back up. Let me read, if I could, Revelation 13. Let's look at this beast, because you need to hear this. Revelation 13. I didn't want to do this, but I think we need to. Watch this. 7th verse. And it was given unto him to make war against the saints. Where were the saints? West Africa, in the Saharians. And what? Against the saints, and to overcome them. And power was given to the tongues, and power given over all the kindreds and tongues and nations. So when you say you speak Hebrew, they had the power to change your Hebrew language and give it back. That's what the beast is saying. Revelations 13:7. Watch this. Watch this. So he goes on to say, first verse, and I stood up on the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and upon those horns were 10 crowns, and upon those heads is the name of blasphemy, is the name of colonization, is the name of what? Enemy against Yah. Because Yah created you with your own, after your family, after your language, after your land. What colonization did was took away everything that Yah created according to Genesis, when he told the 3 sons, after your family, after your tongue, after your land. Colonization took away your family, your tongue, and your land. That's what he's telling you right here. That's the blasphemy, the undoing what Yah said the basic level of life is for a human being. The basic level of life, as far as Yah is concerned, after your family, after your tongue, after your land. Colonization says, no, your family is ours, your tongue is ours, and your land is ours. That's the blasphemy that's upon the head of the beast. The blasphemy is called the theory of colonization. That's that name upon the beast. That's the name of blasphemy upon the beast. Colonization is the name of blasphemy. Understand what I just told you. Now, watch this. And the beast was like unto a leopard, and his feet, and I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were like unto a bear, and his mouth was like unto a lion. And the dragon gave, who is the seat, the Pontifex Maximus seat, power to him and great authority. What are you saying, Pastor Wilkin? The colonization has been influenced by the kingdoms of Hellenization. Colonization has been influenced by the kingdoms of Hellenization. Hear that. Now, watch this. Watch this. In the 8th verse, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose name is not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the earth. Those who are caught up in colonization has no place in the kingdom of Yah. Christianity is a part of colonization. Islam is a part of colonization. Judaism is a part of colonization. Catholicism is a part of colonization. And John is warning you, none of this has a place in the Lamb book of life. That's what he's telling you. Now, let's go back over, because we're going to lock America down where America can't deny their role. So we know the blasphemy upon his head is colonization. That's the philosophy of colonization. That's the blaspheme that's up on the head of the beast. Now, watch this. Let's go back again. Let's look at the 5th verse. And upon her head was the name written, Mystery Babylon, the great mother of harlots, abomination of the earth. The United States of America is Mystery Babylon. Why is it being called Mystery Babylon? Because nobody knows who it is, because it's that far from existence. From the time that the beast rise, there's no mention or no concept of America. But there's a concept of all the 7 what? Colonizers. All 7 colonizers are in existence when the beast rides from the Atlantic slave, from the Atlantic Sea to control the Atlantic slave trade. They are in existence. All 7 heads are in existence. They haven't taken their authority yet. Now, the mystery country would be America. How do you know that again, Pastor Wilkins? Let's read the 11th verse again. And the beast that was is not. Even he is the 8th. So the part of the beast that was don't exist yet. Hear that. Even he, which is the 8th, and is of the 7th. America is the country that is of the 7th head of that beast. America would eventually join the philosophy of colonization, and they would rule. And you hear America. They believe that the white race is superior to the black race. White supremacy comes into pass through colonization. That's when you hear the term white supremacy. What did white supremacy go do? They knocked the noses off of the sphinxes over in Africa, because they didn't need you to know that black folks did this and black folks did that. What did they do in slavery? They stole your inventions. They stole your ideals, because they didn't need you to know that the black race did this and the black race did that. What did they do? They bring you a white messiah, because they don't need you to know the people who are being colonized. You have your own deity that you look up to. And this is what colonization has done to you. And America has done this on steroids. Again, I do chase in our history. I've never seen or heard of a slave escaping anywhere from the Atlantic slave trade running to America. Every slave that's ever escaped America was running to other places where these places had chattel slavery. Hear that. Now, so we understand that 7th head produces the 8th head. We know that's Mystery Babylon, because it doesn't have a name, nor has it taken form yet. That's America, because America would be that head that is produced by the 7th head. That's what you're dealing with. Colonization's philosophy is clear. The black race needs supervision by the white race, because the God that looks just like them agrees that the black race needs supervision by the white race. That's why Christians were running the slave trade. That's why Jews were running the slave trade. That's why Catholics were running the slave trade. 95% of slavery was owned by what? Governing bodies of Christianity. They wrote the slave codes, and they told you the difference between a Christian and that property you called a slave. They brought the black man. Christianity brings the black man all over the earth into a position of second citizen. Everywhere you see Christianity, you see the black race as a second citizen. Mystery Babylon is America. The blasphemy up on the head of the beast is the colonization theory that erases the law, the statute, and the commandment through the edicts of the Catholic Church. History tells us all this. Racism and white supremacy was produced through colonization. That's where the term white supremacy come from, and they put the cherry on the top by giving you a blonde head, blue eye messiah, even though it tell you that when the only part of the body that you see on that messiah is of the skin color would be in the feet, where the robe drape, and it said those feet were as broad. They were of a color like you and I. That's what it's telling you. They were of a color like the Messiah was of a color like you and I, and he gets translated to blonde hair, blue-eyed Messiah through colonization. Hellenization brought you Serapis Christos, and colonization brought you Jesus Christ, the Messiah that would change the world for the black race. Because that Messiah made you a second-class citizen, because it took away your heritage and your Hebraic faith. Your Hebraic faith is the commandments of Yah through the Sabbath. That Sabbath is the oldest commandment of the 10 Commandments. It is the only commandment that existed before man. And that's what they took away from you. And Yah sees that as blasphemy. And that's why the name on the head of the beast is colonization. That beast is colonization. And the racism that produced the black race as inferior. So when you say a black person can be a racist, you don't understand colonization and what racism is. There's no language that we speak right now today that we speak from any indigenous form. That's why the scripture tells us he will return us to our pure language. We get too caught up in I can speak Hebrew, I can speak that. No, you can't. Colonization made sure it took your language and it gave it back to you, but it's under the influence of the colonizers. Hear that. I think a lot of you want to go back and watch this from the beginning, because I showed you how the seventh head of those colonial powers produced the eighth head, which is America, and I just proved to you Mystery Babylon means unknown country, and the only unknown country of colonization is America at the time that colonization has begun. You're dealing with the name of the head on the beast as colonization, because it's blasphemous against Yah from the beginning of the sons of Noah, after their family, after their language, and after their land. Colonization took your language, took your family, and took your land. That's the name of blasphemous on the head of the beast, which would be colonization. I'm Pastor Wilkins of Chasing Our History. I'm only a historian of the scripts. I put history with the scripts. I come in a different prophecy than others. Many say I'm not a prophet, but yet I can explain the things that prophecy says we need to know. That's a prophet. It confirms itself. Y'all bless you all. I hope you enjoyed what I said. Part 3, we'll work on and give it to you as y'all give it to me. Part 2, colonization, revelations, and the revealing of colonization. Part 1, revealing the dragon seed up on the earth. If you missed part 1, go look at part 1, because it connects to part 2. Y'all bless you all.